Mercedes pushing the limits of what is deemed legal by the FIA's rulebook isn't new to anybody by now. But this past weekend at Canada, the Silver Arrow team may have done too much this time, as teams in the paddock believe that Mercedes and the FIA are in some ways in collusion with the new upgrade they brought to Canada. So what was this update? Did it work in Mercedes' favour? Well, you're going to have to stick around to find out. But before we get to it, consider subscribing if you think the political battle behind the scenes is getting as interesting as the races like we do. Now that's out of the way, let's get to it. If you haven't heard by now, the FIA had released a technical directive to give teams more leeway and options on what is legal when it came to dealing with the buzzword and phenomena of the season, called porpoising. And the team that spearheaded this movement was Mercedes, who, to every team on the paddock's surprise, introduced additional stays during the sessions leading up to Sunday's race. Many teams on the paddock were shocked as to how fast Mercedes was able to react and to take advantage of the new allowances. Alpine team principal Otmar Szafnauer was one of them and told the media that if the FIA were to let Mercedes compete with the additional stays on Sunday, that they would have undoubtedly lodged a protest with the FIA, saying, "The technical directive came out when our chief technical officer was flying over, and we aren't able to produce a stay here. And as far as the process goes, it's a technical directive, and technical directives, as we all know, aren't regulations." It has almost been a week since the practice sessions in Canada, and it is still unclear to everyone how the German team was able to react so quickly. But it is known in the paddock that everyone was shocked and angry with the Mercedes second stay. Szafnauer would add, "So it could very well be that we shouldn't be running this in qualifying in the race. And if teams have brought those stays, I would imagine they could be perhaps looked at after and then protested." But the team would end up not pushing through with the new upgrade, as they figured out that it didn't bring them much improvement, with George and Lewis finishing in P6 and P8 respectively. Now, as we can remember, all of this started back in Baku, with Hamilton being the poster boy of how painful the porpoising could be when not properly dealt with. Along with Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff, both the team's drivers Lewis Hamilton and George Russell have also been vocal about the physical toll they take from driving the new era of cars. And I think by now it's a fact that whatever Mercedes says, Red Bull's head of driver development Helmut Marko will always have something to say back. With Marko now commenting on Lewis' back pain after the 7-time champion got back to the podium in Canada, saying, "Hamilton got out of the car quickly today. When he's on the podium, it's a lot easier." Marko would also go on to comment about the FIA's recent directives against porpoising, saying, "I don't think the FIA's decisions are right. One team, Mercedes, has the biggest problems, and then you react in the middle of the season. There is a simple solution. You just have to raise the car. Then you no longer have this bouncing, but you lose speed." The fact that they are now reacting in this way and trying to impose such powers on the FIA, which practically determine the setups of the cars, is a quick fix that has certainly not been thought through. Hamilton would personally go on to say that their stance as a team isn't to gain a competitive advantage, but rather from the standpoint of keeping every driver on the grid safe. In his words, "Ultimately, I think safety is the most important thing. I think there is a lot of work to be done, and it's positive that the FIA are working towards improving it, because we have this car for the next few years. So it's not about coping with the bouncing for the next 4 years. It's about completely getting rid of it and fixing it so that the future drivers, all of us, don't have back problems moving forwards." This statement from Lewis could be received in two ways. It could be taken positively because he is bringing a voice to what is bringing, if not all, according to Christian Horner, a good amount of drivers have to physically deal with. Or it could be taken as just pure whining. And that is how it seems to be how F1 legend David Coulthard is taking Lewis' comments, as he believes that anyone who feels uncomfortable should step aside, as there are plenty of drivers who would be more than willing to take their place. In his words, if any driver feels uncomfortable, if any driver feels he's doing himself long-term damage, step aside. There's a whole bunch of guys and girls that would very happily step into your car if you feel uncomfortable. I think we have to keep in perspective that sport doesn't come with Princess and the Pea mattresses. If you're a boxer, you have to accept someone's going to punch you in the face. If you're a footballer, someone's going to drag their studs down the back of your legs. So I think we have to keep in perspective a little bit that this is where certain teams are, and there'll be evolution, but for the most part, just get on with it. And now, as the calendar pushes on to both Lewis and George's home race in Silverstone, the pairing will be delighted to hear that the team plans on introducing a plethora of upgrades to the W13, with their team's technical director Mike Elliott saying, "One thing you can be sure of is we will push as hard as we can. We will be bringing new bits to Silverstone. We will be trying to push the car forward, trying to get some pace from the car we've got, or from the package we've got, as well as the new bits we are going to add to it." I think at the same time though, we have to be honest with ourselves and say that at the moment, we are just a little bit behind those front runners in Ferrari and Red Bull. And in a normal race, I think it is going to be tough. I think Silverstone will be a circuit that suits us a little bit better, like Barcelona did. But maybe it will be just a little bit difficult. Whatever happens, we will push as hard as we can. Many believe that the cause of Mercedes as of late, excluding Canada, was that races were on street circuits with bumpier tracks. Now that the calendar shifts back to a more conventional racetrack like Barcelona, where the W13 and the team showed glimpses of what the team could be, is exciting both for the driver and their fans. But team principal Toto Wolff would manage everyone's expectations, saying, "One swallow doesn't make a summer. We saw that swallow in Barcelona, but somehow it flew somewhere else. So I think we need to be careful. We were off the pace on Friday. In the wet, we were good yesterday. I think it was respectable. And I think that today, at times, we were with the quickest cars. In the second stint, Lewis and George were almost matching the front runners. Not quite, but on some laps. So that was very encouraging to see. But we need to be careful. There's so much work we need to do to be back at the front, and we aren't there yet." Talking about the team's performance in Canada, Toto would go on to say, "Silverstone was good to us in the past and the circuit is smoother than the last 3 ones. But it's not Barcelona, so now we should manage our own expectations and really grind away, look at the data and come up with some sensible solutions, not just for Silverstone, but going forward." Toto would also be asked on what he thinks the team should work on to improve their pace. To this, he would reply with, "I think we just need to put more load in the car, more downforce, and equally, do that with a car that is not as low on the ground as we have expected. It's a clear direction. You can see the cars are going higher, and this is where we need to find the performance." Going into Silverstone, Mercedes is only 40 points behind Ferrari for the Constructors' Championship. And while they are a good amount behind Red Bull, if Mercedes play their cards right and Ferrari crumbles yet again, we may have an interesting battle for second in the Constructors' Championship at the very least. But what do you think? Is Mercedes whispering in the ears of the FIA? Will they be able to finish in the podium places next weekend? Let us know in the comment section below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't.